Hello, this is People's View, and I want to introduce Kevin Scully, who's running for Alderman in Ward 7 in Nashua.
Ward 6.
Right?
6.
Welcome aboard.
All right. Hey, thanks for having me.
How's it going so far?
Well, it's going. I mean, this is not the first political
Right.
campaign I've been involved with, as you know.
Yeah, you were
Although,
representative there for a year or 2 years.
yes, I was. Yeah, for the ward. So
Yeah.
I know the ward. I've walked all the streets, and I've pretty much knocked on all the doors there as well. So I've got to talk to a lot of people there over the course of
Sure.
the two campaigns.
It's nice that you're known there. I mean, they know you did work up there. You did a heck of a lot of good jobs in Concord. You got things that I never thought a freshman would do.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I did get some things done. I guess I was probably, in some respects, ignorance helped, in terms of my knowing. I didn't know what I couldn't
That's right.
do.
You didn't know.
So I did it.
I know. I did one of the things that you accomplished, and I got shot down by an elder member of the party just because he didn't think it was appropriate for the thing I wanted to do. But
Well, when I get the interest rate on our late property tax
right,
payments,
that's the one I'm
there was a
talking
lot of
about, yeah.
elders who basically, shut me down, and it came out of the committee 0 to 23 against, and I got it flipped on the House floor, and we got it through the Senate, and we get it passed.
well, that's good. And hopefully, if you get when you get to be an alderman, you'll be able to do some of the things and surprise everybody. What's your big issue here with the city?
Well, there's a lot of things, but I guess if I was going to pick one, it would be to make sure that the city spending doesn't spin out of control. As you know, we had a lawsuit, and Fred Boom and Dan Moriarty actually took it all the way up to New Hampshire Supreme Court, trying to get the city to honor the spending cap. Ironically, the New Hampshire Supreme Court decided that our spending cap was unenforceable. Now, I will say, the voters didn't say that.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very important distinction.
It is.
And my concern is now that the fiscal restraints that had been put in place by the voters is gone, that it's very, very important that we put people into the, positions of responsibility,
Right.
such as the Alderman board, to make sure that we don't start getting a little crazy with other people's money.
That's true. That's true.
It was interesting. Well, I started thinking about it, and the difference between, say, us in the real world and government, and we have our own fiscal constraints, and usually it's the income we get from our job. Now, no private person sits down and goes through his wish list and says, well, I want a new car, new roof on the house, siding would be nice. Let's take that vacation.
That's
and then
right.
you total up all of the costs, and then you march into your boss's office and say, oh, by the way, boss, you got to pay me another $30,000 a year because I want to do all these things, right? And the boss is going to look at you and say, no, it doesn't work that way. But it does work that way with government.
Yeah.
And so what my concern is that we don't get people on the aldermanic board who are saying, boy, this would be nice, and boy, we got to do that, And you just come up with this entire list, and you tally it up, you're going, ooh, that's a lot. We're going to have to raise taxes.
Do you think it's going to be a lot of things that they want to do that increases the budget more than a reasonable amount?
Well, of course, yeah, that's always in the eye of the beholder, what a reasonable amount is. But, I think that I'd like to keep the spending cap. I mean, in terms of, in spirit, to continue to use that as the limitation on what the government can take from us, you and I, the homeowners, and that becomes an issue of prioritization. If you can spend as much as you want, then there is no need to prioritize.
It might not have to be a legal barrier, but it could be an oral barrier.
Yeah, and again, from my perspective, I'm telling people I will honor the spending cap. Now, there may be, there may always be some kind of extraordinary circumstance where we have to go above and beyond that. And I recognize that, and I'll tell people right now that if something comes up that really needs to be dealt with, I'll help deal with it appropriately. But barring unforeseen catastrophe or anything else like that, I plan to honor that spending caps because I want to make sure that affordability
Yeah.
stays with all of us. It's funny, I think that's one of the big things you hear nowadays is how the city has to do something about affordable housing. Well, I think affordable housing starts with you and what you're being charged for with taxes. So that, what's one of my mottos,
That's one of the
affordable housing.
things that you look at when you buy a house.
Of course, absolutely. And actually it affects the value of the house too.
right.
If the taxes are too high, your value goes down. So one of the ways, if you want to increase your asset wealth,
Right.
is to make sure that your taxes aren't too high. So
Well, what about transparency with the, let the people know what's going on, give them a little bit of a warning,
yes,
communication between the aldermanic board and the city and the people.
right. Well, that's one thing. I think I did a pretty good job when I was a state representative of having my Facebook page and posting things that were up there. I gave a link to the calendar so everybody knew exactly what we were voting on every single week. And I'm going to try to do, well, if I'm elected,
Of course, you gotta
excuse
be
me,
positive.
I will try to do the same thing
Yeah.
as an alderman. So people, I don't want anybody to get blindsided
Right.
by what's going on. I want to give people fair notice and enough leeway or pre-notification so that they can weigh in to me as to what they think I should be doing as their representative to the city.
Well, there are a lot of other things that I can see now that are going to be coming up in the next year or two. A lot of capital expense. We're going to be talking about what do we do, but build another junior high? Do we have, what do we do with Elm Street? How do we handle the people who don't have a house to go to, the homeless people, and the drug situation? Plus the fact that the school budget's always a bigger part of the bill, I guess you might say, every year. So all those things are going to be quite a load.
Right. Well, you see, now it comes back to prioritization again, because we could try to use government to solve every single problem. And if you want to do that and you want to throw money at that, well, we can give it a shot, but I guarantee you your tax rate's going to fly up through the roof.
Yeah.
And some of these problems are quite honestly intractable. I mean, at the end of the day, when it comes to, it's funny, they call it the opioid epidemic.
Right.
It's not an epidemic. Because an epidemic is something where you have a disease that's communicable.
Right.
Where if I come in a room and I cough on you, you get it. That's an epidemic. What we have here is, God help those poor souls, there's a lot of people who are falling prey to weakness
Right.
and causing that to happen. There's root and base causes, in terms of lack of meaning in people's lives. I do think having God in your life really helps, in terms of making sure that when tough times come, you have someplace to turn to. Folks who can't do that or fall prey to the weakness,
Right.
pleasure, just seeking pleasure, whatever, those are personal issues. And I don't think the government can step in and fix that. I'm not saying we shouldn't help people in crisis situations, but I think you have to be very cognizant of the fact of what you can and can't do in this world and what government should try to do and what government should stay away from.
Well, there are a lot of not-for-profit organizations in the city, more than I really ever imagined. But I don't know how well they're organized, and they do get money from the city. So that might be one way of focusing on providing some sort of direction. I think I don't know what you favor, but it starts all the way from the beginning with education to have people really know what it's like, and then there's also in recovery for ones to make sure that they don't get once they go off it, they don't get back on, and all those things.
But again, I think we have to certainly we got to help them in the moment of crisis to try to save their lives. I do think that we need to point them in the right direction to give them hope. It just, again, becomes a question of how much is the government going to try to do with some of these situations. Because at the end of the day, you're responsible for yourself, your happiness, your putting food on the table, those kind of things. I think it comes back to personal responsibility.
I agree. That's the most part that you have to do. But people who do help with all these organizations, I don't know whether you have a bureaucracy by itself that you can't control too. That's another problem, I think.
Right. Well, I do believe in private charity. I think we do need to help our fellow man. I do myself, and my wife, to the extent that we're able to do that. But I think we have to draw lines between what's the proper role for people trying to help each other, and whether government steps in and says, well, I think I'm going to try to help all of these people, and I'm going to take money from you to pay for it.
Right.
That's where I think that we have to be very, very careful, especially when you have people, elderly people on fixed incomes in houses.
Oh, definitely.
I mean, you can, again, I don't want to make them homeless because we've decided to do too much.
You hear a lot of stories like that, the people who are kicked out of their house because they had medical bills they couldn't pay, or something like that, and then they're almost homeless.
So I guess in terms of priorities, I started thinking about it, and I said, okay, what are the things that everybody uses most often? And you could make your list from that. And certainly, I would say the roads, in terms of keeping the roads in good repair, keeping them plowed. Trash pickup. Everybody living in a house or an apartment gets trash. The sewer system is very important because you got to flush that toilet and it's got to be taken care of properly. So you can start going down the list of those things that everybody needs. Police, ironically, if the police are doing their job, you really don't see them. But I think everybody wants to have a safe neighborhood. So the fire department, God forbid something awful happens, they have the EMT services and they can come save your house and hopefully your life. Got to have that as well. The school systems are very, very important. I do think that we have to, again, look at different ways. Just throwing money at problems in the school systems is not fixing it. So I think that, unfortunately, that seems to be the go-to answer. Kids are doing poorly, give us more money,
Oh, yeah.
And it's something we have to deal with. I'm hoping that we get a good, responsible school board put into place that's going to come to us with some solutions at the Aldermanic board. I'd like to give that responsibility over to them. I see myself stepping in only if I think things are falling apart and we have to.
Well, they do need a good liaison, so you better, you might think about that, because I think there's a lack of communication until budget time every year, and between the two group, from what I can see, and I think that is necessary for, somebody with a business background. Let me put that, because I think that's what a lot of these civic organizations don't have, is a business background, and it's a bureaucracy that doesn't know how to handle large needs, large amount of needs.
So, I mean, I have been, in trying to understand better how the whole operation works. I met with the DPW. Was it Lisa Foto, which is lovely, lovely woman. I mean, a really with it person. She's handling all of the BTW. John Griffin, our chief financial officer, I had a wonderful phone call with him. I mean, I went through the budget and I had questions, and what a wonderful guy. He's really sharp. We are very blessed to have him as our chief financial officer. So I think I'm getting a handle on, in terms of all the budgetary issues that we have. I did have a call into, Chief Carrigan. Didn't get a chance to meet with him yet. Ironically, I think I called him on the day that Captain Leto died. So I understand why my call was pretty far down on the list of important things. Went over and looked at the wastewater plant, because I think it's very important that we deal with our waste correctly. So I'm trying to do my best to be get ready, so I'll be up and running.
Well, that's a good thing. I don't know if anybody else, I've heard any of the aldermen that was running that would go through some of those things to prep himself.
Well, I think, again, I know who I am and how I think and what I think is important, and I try to do that to make sure, again, if folks trust me with this position of responsibility, that I'll be able to represent them well.
Can you give them just a brief description of your background that qualifies you for this job?
Well, I think my time on the in the state legislature. I did meet with the mayor. Of course, we had meetings in terms of talking about the city issues where they were looking for help with. So I think I have a good overview of what the issues are for the city of Nashua from that perspective. And I've got I do have a good, strong fiscal background. I'm a project manager. I run multi-million-dollar projects. I know how to make things happen on time and stay within budgets.
Okay, that's very good, I think, information for the people to look who they're putting into that office.
So anyway, it's Ward 6. There's my sign.
Yeah.
Thank you for letting me put it up here. So if you drive around in Ward 6 and see that, that's me. And I would ask, please, that you consider making me your alderman. I promise I will try to do the job well, correctly, help you with issues that you have, in terms of getting the city services you pay for and deserve. And I'll try to do it so that we don't break your bank.
Very good. Thank you very much, and hopefully you'll win, and we'll have you back here to tell us how you're doing as an alderman.
Okay.
Okay?
Hey, thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.
All right.